Welcome back to another episode of Still Left Out in America, and I'm really excited to be talking to Beth Kempf. I think people ask me pretty much every single day or every other day what it's like on the ground in real time right now, trying to deal with both homelessness and a pandemic. And there is not another person in the United States of America that can answer that question better than Beth Kempf, who is the Executive Director of Community Cares. And if it's okay with Beth, I want to go back to March before we talk about the current state of affairs. I want to go back to March when the state, in our case, Pennsylvania, but basically states all across the country were shut down. Beth runs a emergency shelter with overnight accommodations in churches. If you remember carefully, the churches were also shut down. People couldn't go to church anymore when the shutdowns first happened. So if people can't go to church, can homeless people go to a church and sleep there? I guess is the first question, Beth. What happened March 6th or 7th when all this started crashing down around us?
Thank you, Pat, for having me here today. Yeah, I'm trying to remember because it feels like such a long time ago. So March, I wish I could say I knew where we were at exactly, but the location that we were at, it was not going to be okay that we stayed there. So we very quickly had to reach out to another location, and our local American Legion has a ballroom. They had to close completely, and they were willing to kind of take a risk and let us stay at their property. But simultaneous to that was we shelter upwards of 70 people, men, women, and children. So, I know that we all heard the rumblings in March and, what does it look like? And there was a lot of, still uncertainty with it all, but, how does it affect us? And I guess as a provider, I was hoping for a lot more direction or any kind of leadership. And so in that regard, we were really out on our own. And because our county does not have maybe as high of a homeless count as maybe another county, like ones with big cities, so there aren't as many providers in our area, there really was no one doing what we do in our community. And I reached out through our COC, I reached out to every level for anybody to be like, hey, what are y'all doing? How are you handling this? Because we have a 3,600 square foot day center. We have borrowed property that we sleep at night, and we're utterly dependent on everyone, and that's how our organization has been built, through pure dependence, which we like to think is community. Until things get really hard, you are the community. So that's what happened. So we had families in the shelter at the time, so we scrambled. We do not really have money for hotels. We scrambled to scrounge some money to get all the families. We had 3 families in at the time. That made up about 12 people in the shelter. So we were able to get them out. I was able to get our population down to 50 men and women, which is still.
Okay, so let's just back up for a little reminder's sake. So everybody was told, go home.
Yes.
Right, go home, stay in your house.
Right.
Only have your bubble. Don't mix with other people. This was before even really social distancing was like, oh, you can go out but stay 6 feet away. I mean, literally construction crews couldn't work on construction. Everything was
right, absolutely.
Because it wasn't safe to be near somebody else. And you had a family of 70 people. That was their bubble. And of course, people come in contact with it. And so you were able to get 12 people off of that bubble by sending them to hotels, by putting those 3 families in a hotel. Now your family's down to 58 or so people. Okay.
Yes.
So just to kind of remind people.
Yeah. And and even during that time, if you remember, it was kind of like state of emergency. Don't even drive if you don't have to. We had to have, we wrote letters saying we are essential personnel, and no one really got fined in our community, but some other communities were pulling people over saying, why are you on the street? So that was a thing. So anyway, so right away, they said the whole 15 days to flatten the curve. And I had thought I came up with a plan of rotating staff to help support it, knowing our volunteers were no longer going to be there, and we were very volunteer dependent. We're other people's property dependent, we're volunteer dependent. we are utterly helpless or useless feeling without any of those things. And suddenly all those things were pulled from us, but what we truly owned, which was our day center. And I wrestled with it, you know, kind of like till they're telling us we're already in the middle of it, but like they gave us a timeline, this date, we're going to close down everything, like kind of like an overnight thing. And the more I wrestled with it, thought about it, and wasn't really getting a lot of feedback from anybody, I thought I can't put my staff in that circumstance because I don't know anything. This could be, I don't know, like we had no gauge for it. We had never experienced this before, so we didn't have a mindset for it. So at that time, I had made a decision to also ask my staff to not return to the building and to remote from other offices. So staff remoted from other offices, and I moved in full-time into the shelter 24/7 for what I thought was going to be a 3-week period, because that was kind of what they said, the flatten the curve piece.
Okay, so hang on. So when you moved into the building, so you say to your staff, I don't know if COVID-19 causes mass death. So I don't want my staff to be exposed to a disease I don't understand. So I'm just going to expose me to a disease I don't understand.
Right, because then there's people there that can keep the organization going after the fact.
Right, after you're dead of the disease you didn't understand.
Yeah, yes, well, yes, but that way things keep going.
Incredibly self-sacrificing, which I'm not allowed to gloss over. You will not be allowed to gloss over this fact. So you have a resource center on one street, and you have the ballroom of a Legion 2 blocks away that says you can sleep here. So when you say you moved into the shelter full time, you spent all day at the resource center and all night at the ballroom?
Yes, I did.
Oh, okay.
Every need was cared for by the shelter. I absolutely 1,000% knew what it would be like to rely completely on the goodness of a community to provide a shelter for me. Absolutely 100%.
Because you effectively made yourself homeless. You made it so it was impossible for you to go home because you were not allowing other staff to come in and put themselves in danger.
Correct. Yes.
So you went from homeless shelter director to homeless shelter co-inhabitant.
Sure.
Wow.
Yeah.
I just want that out there.
So I say that we're like a homeless shelter.
You know, that is really remarkable. And you know, I don't think they have like superhero thing awards, but they need one for you. I really
no. No, truly. I feel like when I stepped into this, I stepped in and I bought into the mission. I believe in what we're trying to accomplish. And I say every day, when I look at every resident that I connect with, or every person that we connect with, except by the grace of God, so go I. So there could be a moment that it's my turn to have that level need. And if the rug was completely pulled out from under you and everybody pulled away and there was not one hand there to help you, like, what would you do? And I want to be that hand. I want to know that if this is all I can give you, I'm going to give you that. Because I wasn't giving them much. I wasn't giving them safety. I was just giving them shelter at that point.
Right. Well, I want to say, and I'm not being flippant, but there, for the grace of God, you did go. You were given situations that said, okay, Beth, you have 2 choices here. Shutter the doors, close the place, go home, be safe, send your staff home, be safe. There are 70 people, oh well, cast them to the wind. Or send your staff home to be safe and join the 70. And only yourself only also have shelter. Because
well, listen, I didn't make my staff work. They had cameras on me all the time because we have cameras everywhere. They knew that if I had a distress, I would need some support. And at least those initial several days, there was contention. We had some pretty severe behaviors of some of our people, you know, because when fear comes in, it comes in lots of forms. And there was no real support. There was no police coming to check on us. And when we called for one incident, they were not allowed to come. And so we were really on our own, and everyone was at that moment. For at least 3 days of those 3 weeks, it was really like everything pulled back because no one knew what to expect. It was kind of like it had snowed like 4 feet and everything closed down except it didn't, you know? So
Right.
it was that same kind of feeling.
Did you have enough food and things in the
That's the thing. The whole thing was like I had the staff continue. We got on the swing of Zooming. We continued to do intakes during that time. We implored the community. So what I did was right before it happened, I reached out to our local soup kitchen. I'm like, hey, what will you guys do? And they said, oh, wait up, we're not sure. And then like they had put out something a couple days later. They said they're going to have a brown bag meal with like fruit and bread. And I thought, oh my gosh, I've got to feed these guys at least 1 meal a day. So we instantly blanketed the community and like, listen, we need this. We need at least 1 hot meal a day. We need it for both our shelter people and our non-sheltered people. Also, the local community showers had to be closed down, and I've worked desperately with the borough. What am I allowed to do? How can I do this? We got porta potties put in, we got outdoor sinks put in, and after a couple weeks, I was able to make it that we could utilize our showers, which we continue to do today for the unsheltered people in our community. So I spend probably 8 to 12 hours a day on the phone because I was scrambling to find support, help, where can I go, who can help me, and who's interested in helping me. And that took a lot, but after 3 weeks, we were able to get into our community center in town. And that made all the difference for us. It's more than enough space. I felt really comfortable continuing to take people in. We continued to do the intakes. We were getting calls from anything and everything, you name it. Witness protection was calling us to see if we could help people. Anything you can think of. Some people were calling me, they just needed to talk to a human voice, and I was the only human voice that answered. You know, like just different social service stuff. For at least those first 3 weeks, people were just, they were scared, they were looking for someone. They're like, I don't know how to fill out this form, I don't know how to do this online. None of that was our job, none of that was what we did, but that's what I was able to do. I mean, I'm living there with these guys, I can talk you through how to fill out your access information. I can tell you how to do that. So we did all those things. And as a crew, it was really cool. And I really did love it. Within the shelter structure, we cared for each other. I said, listen, I'm not doing this alone. You guys are responsible. We're keeping this place clean. We're doing this stuff. And they did it, and they worked well together. And even when we had some people with their mental health status of being what it was, and they got a little violent, and again, I didn't have any support. I had to say, listen, you can't be in when everyone else is in, but I'll work you in when I can get you in to get food and to drink, but you can't be in with the group. You know, he ultimately slept in the porta pot for a while. I didn't want him to, but he had somewhere to get out of the elements because he wasn't safe, but I couldn't find a safe alternative at that time. We eventually did, you know. It took a long time to kind of get all those supports. So everything was like, what do I do with you? People were, you know, having their own kind of crisis, mental health crisis in particular during that time, because, you know, that's what anxiety does to you, right? It kind of heightens all those things that you're already struggling. But we eventually, you know, within the second week, we really as a crew found a rhythm. And so when I'd be like, listen, I say to the gang, like, listen, I know there's people over here, we have to figure out how to get food to them. Such and such staff members stopping by here. I need you all to put together a care package for them. Man, they were all jumping in, helping us do the care package, getting it out to the staff member's car, social distancing so the staff could drop it off to someone. So we were, you know, very, it was hard, but it was amazing. It was a beautiful thing.
Okay, so let's break this into 2 things. First of all, when you say unsheltered, for folks who are watching who don't understand that means those are people who live outside who don't have a shelter to go to, which means especially with all the coffee shops closed and all the library was closed, every public restroom in the town was closed. These are people who have nowhere to even brush their teeth anymore or use anything. So you folks up at CARES, you put porta potties and sinks outside for the people who don't even seek shelter, the ones who live in their car or in the woods or somewhere else. And then of course, everyone who was in their home, unable to see their mother, their father, their uncle, their aunt, their child, who was in the next town, was scared. So now you've got people who are next to someone who's got a bad cough in a 50-person shelter, and they're scared, and that's adding to an anxiety level, and you're in there trying to negotiate all of this tension. Mm-hmm. Was there a time and I think we're going to need a 5-hour show to get through this whole 6 months, but was there a time in that first 3 weeks when you thought, I'm walking out that door and I'm not coming back.
No, I never felt that. I think I felt humbled to be there with them. It was just a very beautiful experience for me, really. It was hard, but don't get me wrong. I mean, but I say, like, I'm fortunate to have had the life that I have. And I'm fortunate to have the family that I have that were willing, my husband particularly, like, I'm like, have a talk. My daughter's a nurse, and my husband, I had a talk with both of them, and because no one knew what it was, very initially. And I get a little teary on this because I really mean this, though. Like, we had the serious talk. There is a chance this would affect us as a family for a long time, or maybe forever. And I needed them to, be willing to release me to do this. And there's no doubt on their mind. They knew that's who I am, was what I was going to do. That's who they are too, and so that's just, for us, it was really no question. But I made a point to honor my family first. I didn't just say, I'm going to sacrifice, I'm going to be this thing. And I don't want it to seem like it was such a sacrifice, because truly, like, if I needed toothpaste, I had toothpaste. I needed toilet paper, I had toilet paper. Like, I was like, dang, we really take care of these people. I was like, no, I didn't need a thing.
Though I understand, because I have a daughter who's a nurse, and she did get COVID because she worked on a COVID floor, and her husband got it. And then because nobody knew what was happening, she got it back in March when it first started. Nobody really understood it. Their friends got it. Her whole peer group had COVID. My daughter got it and got better fairly quickly. My son-in-law was sick for a very long time. It seems to affect men differently. So yeah, there's an enormous amount of fear. And the other thing about a shelter is sometimes the only thing when you're kind of trapped and you can't go anywhere to do is to leave the TV on, which wasn't helpful because that was full of fear.
No, that was definitely not. We played bingo. We've never done these things. We had organized activities, and I got prizes, and I would like, we'd have a lot of fun with that. So that, again, it was a whole other environment than what shelter normally is, because shelter is very goal oriented. We're working towards because like our mindset is we want to work you towards something permanent, because anything you're dealing with is going to come better from a permanent location. This is temporary. Please don't focus on this. But in that moment, that was home. That was really home. And helped me understand why some people struggle moving on from it, because many people that we engage have either kind of gone through and have immense broken relationships, or have never really had any relationships, have never really understood how to relate, or no one was willing to relate to them. And so I've always known that community piece was really important to me, because I see that in our residents, that they start hanging out, even though it might not be the best relationship, that there's some camaraderie that's built off of that. During that time, they really had that family community feel with one another, where typically you're kind of like, we even encourage them, like, hey, keep your focus on your goals. Don't let this person's situation hang you up from moving forward. And so in that time, everyone was rooting for everyone. Everyone was seeing the need to help each other out in a way that, is not common for us to see that strong. And we don't even encourage it that much, because we're encouraging them to be kind of independent, right? Because a lot of times they pull each other down.
Right. But they also do the thing where they drive each other to the grocery store, and they do other stuff as a community that they can't do anymore because the grocery stores were closed. But so we move forward. And so the first transitional period when, oh, guess what? Flattening the curve didn't work. And, and we didn't make it go away. It didn't happen and then disappear like a miracle. So then there was a big community area, a building in the borough that was given over to you folks for the summer. Right, for the duration
until July. Mm-hmm.
Right. So from say April till July, you had a much bigger space that was permanent. Did you move into that 24 hours a day, or did you keep going back and forth from the resource center?
I did not move the same way. All total, I slept at the shelter 75 days because we relied on volunteers for our night. We lost that. This entire experience. And what I was asking the staff to continue to do was taxing on them as well. I couldn't ask them to also sleep in the shelter at that time. So for 75 days, I slept there. So my husband built us what I call a bubble, this whole little plexiglass little workstation, and we put that in the Stewart Center. And then I felt a little more comfortable allowing the staff to come in because there was enough space and we had precautions. So I was able to start rotating staff in. I left probably a couple hours a day to come over to the resource center. I still didn't come home, or I would, if I popped home, I popped home for like an hour, you know, because it was just getting to be a little like much. But I also I had to be very cautious because, you know, I'm putting my family, it was just my husband and my dogs at the time there, you know. So we, you know, we had all of those. So I lived there 75 days. I slept there every night. I spent most of my time there, but I was able to have a slight amount of freedom, which was really strange because I had been so tucked in. It was
Right.
strange freedom. So we stayed there, and the community continued to just overwhelm us with the meals, providing we had one hot meal every day, at least. We were still trying to keep our group from going out and about. For people that had been in prison longer than they needed to be, in mental health facilities longer than they needed to be, because in rehabs longer than they needed to be, because there was nowhere for them to be, you know. And so we were able to help out with some of them, and we kept about an average of 50 people in shelter, men and women. I scrambled to keep trying to get hotel money so we could keep helping families, and that's the position that we're still in right now for a little bit longer. So right now, so then July, the United Methodist Church, we're about to move out of their church. They allowed us to come there starting July because the Stewart Center, understandably, now we've been in lockdown for how many months, and children needed some better level supports. They were recognizing that as a community. The Stewart Center made absolute sense to move into as activities for families and children to be doing. So it was important that they needed that space. So then we went back to scrambling. So for 3 weeks, we were able to use the United Methodist gymnasium. And then from there, thankfully, and until this date still, the American Legion opened up again for us. We cut our people back. We're at 35, 37 people. So we've had to cut back, which has been hard. And we currently probably have 6 or 7 families in hotels right now. And so we continue to partner and we work with our funding agencies, whatever we can do to kind of be creative. In the midst of all of these things, we have applied tirelessly for any grant and every grant known to man to try and provide the support for our community. We've continued to keep the showers open. While we were in the Stewart Center, it worked out like a dream. All the people who did not, that slept out in the woods in tents or in their cars or in someone's back garage, they could come to the day center, get a safe shower because there'd just be a few of them in there at a time, have access to the space out front, get some food, get some hot coffee, because none of that was available to them at all. So they were able to come there and just make some connection, and we were able to connect with them, getting them connected to supports that they may not have otherwise trusted us to help them with before. So in some ways that was also good. And so that's been wonderful. And that piece of it, we do not want to lose that free access sort of time. Although we've had to put limits on it again, simply because we have had to introduce our people back to our day center, which I tried desperately not to have happen, but I couldn't find an alternative yet.
Well, and that's something that pre-COVID, you had really changed the direction of CARES from not removing any of the providing emergency shelter and helping folks, but really started a street outreach where you were trying anyway to communicate with the unsheltered people who were scattered to the winds, who didn't and who would trust somebody, right? You're on the worst day of your life, why trust anybody? Right. So you made an effort to get out there and get with those people, and then COVID sort of shoved them out. Mm-hmm. So I can see where you wouldn't want to lose that because you were trying to reach out to them before COVID happened anyway.
Correct. Mm-hmm.
So now you're at the Legion, reduced numbers, you got people in hotel rooms, and in some ways it feels like the federal government for a minute just vomited money at programs and said, you better use it up by November, it's going to be gone. And you're like, wait a minute, we still don't even know.
Still told you how to use it. They're still telling you how to use it, not asking you what you need.
Yeah. And the other thing that I've always found difficult, I found it difficult when I was in Paradise, I found it difficult when I was everywhere that like disaster struck, but now COVID has struck disaster everywhere. excuse me, is make sure you don't help the people who were in trouble before the disaster hit. You got to make sure this was caused by COVID. Why? Isn't disaster enough when it's disaster? You know, and you know, COVID didn't help. The Paradise Fires didn't help the guy who was already homeless. Excuse me. So anyway, so you've got these restrictions, but has the influx of some sort of federal and local money helped you do your job, or is there something still? You need a permanent building. That's just, you knew that before, but now it's just never been more apparent, right?
CARES, we as an organization, we were working towards that. So we had been working through 2019 to enhance some of the programming that we had and stabilize financially our programming. So we had been making really positive strides that way, with the intention of 2020, 2021, really working towards a facility that would really accommodate our total vision. But I always had, from the moment I've stepped into CARES, like, I immensely think that what CARES has always done is beautiful and brilliant, but nobody wants to see children with men. You know, no one wants to see that makeup. If that's all you have, that's all you have. But my goal was to work towards getting something a little bit more settled for families, so kids can do their homeworks away. There can be just a little more stability for families in particular.
And so elderly men and women can sleep without a baby screaming. I mean,
all of it, yes.
Not good for anybody.
Yeah, it's not good for anyone.
Yeah.
And the kids always add extra, and there's always multiple children, you know, and so there's always extra tension with families around for the family and for the children. The parents feel bad. Anyway, so we're already working towards that. So that was always a goal of mine, to have families have a separate space. However that looked, and for safety wise for everyone, I just wasn't really sure how to make a facility work. So anyway, so we're already working towards that. So now we're in a position that we have to do something, or we just don't do it. And that to me is just, how could that ever be? You know, it'd be one thing if the whole idea that we're all pursuing the end of homelessness was going to be a reality anytime soon. But even with all the systems and structures that we have together, it's still a very, very volatile system. So it's still like, I still have people coming out of foster care 4 years later, homeless, you know, like we still have that. We still have many reasons why people, and so.
And you have a big anvil hanging over your head for whenever the moratorium on eviction stops.
Correct. And so
that happens,
that's what we did right away. So in March, April, May, I guess probably May was when I was like reaching out to everyone. Hey, is there money coming in for this? How are we keeping people from becoming homeless? Because I can't shelter them. So how are we keeping them from having to be sheltered? And, you know, that was sort of like nothing. And then suddenly started to get some traction. So we just started to apply for every grant we could, because we just knew that was also a part of the crisis. Like, because everyone was uncertain, people were losing their jobs, who's going to be put out in the street, and how can we keep them from being put out in the street, at least until we get past something gets kind of settled. So we pursued monies for that. Simultaneously, we pursued monies for hotels, so we could potentially just shelter our people in hotels. We pursued money for, you name it, anything to kind of keep us going. And initially, it was nothing. And not to mention, when we started getting people that actually tested positive or needed to be quarantined, I wasn't getting direct funding for that. Hospitals were calling me. They had positive people, like, hey, we're told through the state, you guys have the money. I'm like, I wish that were true. I call Pima, you know, like, I mean, so we worked through those things, and we just sort of started to assume the cost, even though we don't have the funds. And I just sort of thought, well, we're just going to do what we're meant to do, and either hope the money comes in and we can remain open, or drive ourselves into the ground and somebody else will have to pick up the ball from there. So that's how we've been operating, running in every direction to try to build relationships, to try and get community. Initially, I just remember being like, hey, does anyone want to meet with me? I'm just like, can we talk through this? So that has been, you know, definitely, you see, I had one leader mention, well, the cavalry got themselves together, they're here now. which was to me like, okay. So
Show me the horses.
thank you.
Show me the horses.
But yeah, so we have gotten prevention dollars. They're COVID related prevention dollars. They were approved, I'm not sure how long ago. We still don't actually have the dollars. So so we're still waiting for those dollars to come in. I right away started working with the county level, whoever has that type of money, how can we streamline and work together? And how can we partner with some of these more difficult scenarios? Like the mom who has 3 kids and never worked, and dad left and he's nowhere to be seen, and she's going to be evicted. She's never held a job. How do we keep her housed? Because surely with this monies that we have, what can we do to make it work, right? So we have always done that. The beauty of this, I hope, is that we'll come out of this and really partner together on things, because who says one thing should really carry all of the weight? So I think that if we partner together on it, it's a much, so I'm partnering with 3 agencies on that one, asking them, how can we make this be a norm? Because sometimes we do a disservice to the support of trying to work with a person by not collaborating on it, and each kind of doing their own part. And then before you know it, we all threw out a lot of money and accomplished nothing. So to kind of this could help us really become working together.
So even if you end up with, everybody, like you made the comment earlier, whatever a person's dealing with, it's easier to deal with if they're permanently housed. So, the whole housing first agenda, we got to get people housed and we can help with the other things. All of that being important, you're still going to end up with people whose house burns down, or this thing happens, or that.
We had 3 of them during COVID, 3. They had to go to shelter. I mean, it's crazy.
And what a nightmare. I mean, if my house was burning down and I had to run outside to COVID, I don't know if I'd want to run outside anymore, right? So you need a permanent building. So if someone's listening with a permanent building, that would be really cool. Call Beth. You also need someone to write $100 check or $1,000 check or a $10 check, right? All of those things would be enormous help, because there are so many people in need, and in order to tick off every box to get help, that's not always possible. What else can people do to help you right now with your struggle? I mean, this is an enormous task. You are still carrying like Atlas with the globe on your head.
Well, the one great thing that's coming, possibly, there's still some things that have to be accomplished. It's an Episcopal home in Shippensburg is opening up, and the Episcopal Church, the Harrisburg Diocese, has given approval to help us out instead of like buying or do any of that stuff. At this point, they've given approval for us to be able to use the property to start our family shelter.
Oh, that's awesome.
So
Congratulations.
Thanks. Obviously, that's a borough thing. We're still waiting for borough approval. I have a call tomorrow, and then we'll have a public hearing on that. That space is a dream. I mean, everyone would have private room. It's just wonderful. And then there's a potential, I have hope for the 2nd floor to be something completely different for people like our one lady that we're working with who makes $600 a month, isn't eligible for anything from anyone. She's 73 years old. She needs help. I need places for people like that to live for life. And so that's what the 2nd floor I hope could eventually be for that type of person. And so that's that space. So that's family. We have looked at several properties. I'm kind of like torn. I have either do $1 million property, which really puts cares at jeopardy because we're really not a $1 million organization, or get something way smaller than what we really can do right now. Like, then I would have to cut my population even smaller. And I want to be able to continue. I want a space that we can continue with a reasonable amount of men and women. And I'm at the 37, but if I could today, I'd probably have 50 if we had the space. But we could be able to have a space where I could separate men and women in the same building, be easier overhead on us, but also have an overflow space so that when those that are not inclined to want to follow shelter lifestyle rules, we could kind of come up with an alternative location for them. So that's really what I want to do entirely. And then our day center, we already intend to turn into an outreach center that be open with our outreach team, working with agencies that partner with myriads of people for needing supports, getting their coordinated entries done, getting their intakes done, getting basic things in their hands, showers, laundry, all those sort of things. We started the laundry voucher thing so that they'll be able to, those that are living unsheltered will be able to come and do laundry, and things like that. So we're working on all those things.
Yeah, because it's tough when you got to go to your job and you're living in the woods and you haven't been able to wash your clothes. So what is the website? What's the address to mail a check to? Give folks a way to help out.
Yeah, I appreciate it. So we're Community Cares. We're at 50 West Penn, P-E-N-N Street, Carlisle. And that's PA17013. Our phone number for any questions, 717-249-1009. Our website, we call ourselves Community Cares More Than Shelter because it's our intention to provide more than shelter. And I hope you heard that in today because we believe that many people need more than simply a place to lay their head. So our website is www.morethanshelter, morethanshelter.org, morethanshelter.org. And you can reach out to us anytime. Our website, we try to keep up. We encourage you to check out our Facebook. That's where our most up-to-date activities. We have our Turnaround Tuesdays. You can hear some of the stories of how people's lives were transformed and some of the things that we've been able to be part of. But again, we cannot do anything without our community, and we value every group, every person, every organization. Literally, we don't have toilet paper without our community, and we appreciate any support that we can get.
Well, Beth, you know, I cannot honor you enough. I can't tell you how much I admire you and how incredibly impressed I am by your dedication to people that it's easy to forget even exist. And I just think you're amazing. So thank you for taking the time to chat with us about it and share your story because it's staggering. It really is. I can't wait.
Thank you very much.
Who do you want to have play you? Who's going to play you in a Lifetime movie?
Yeah, right. Well, listen, here's the honor to me. So, you know, one young man in the shelter yesterday was my birthday. He rode his bicycle, took his own money, and had them put "Happy Birthday, Miss Beth" on a cake for me. That's all that I mean, that's more. I don't think he should do that for me, but that is more than any thanks I could ever give. So,
well, happy birthday, Miss Beth.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you so much.